I didn't expect to be starting over at 38. Not after 12 years of shared toothbrushes, split rent, and Sunday morning waffles. But betrayal doesn't ask for timing. It just breaks in, uninvited, unapologetic. He had been having an affair not for weeks, not even months, 2 years. With someone who brought him lunch at work, and laughed a little too hard at his jokes. And the worst part wasn't the affair itself. It was how effortlessly he lied about it. Like he was telling me the weather. Like it didn't cost him anything to lie to someone who had built a life around his honesty. The divorce wasn't brutal in court, it was brutal in my bones. He moved out, I stayed. Because somehow I thought the house would feel like home if I could just rearrange the furniture. It didn't. Then came the call. 2 months post-divorce, Evan, my ex-husband's son from his first marriage. We were never close. He was already in college when I married his dad. But he was kind, polite, sharp in that quiet, observant way. He said his roommate's situation got bad, asked if he could crash with me for a while, and I didn't say yes because I wanted anything. I said yes because the silence in my house had started echoing back at me. He showed up the next day with tired eyes and 2 duffel bags. Said thank you too many times. I told him he didn't have to. He made his own meals. Kept out of the way. Brought his own toilet paper. It was easy at first, uncomplicated. Then I asked if he wanted to have dinner. It turned into routine, 3 days a week, then 5. Then every night. We talked. About things we never talked about before. Like how we both saw his father without actually seeing him. Like how betrayal doesn't feel like fire. It feels like nothing. Like numbness wearing your clothes. He listened. I didn't realize how foreign that had become. Not nodding along. Not waiting to talk. Just listening. And slowly, my body started responding to the sound of his footsteps in the hallway. I started sleeping better knowing someone else was under the same roof. And I told myself it was harmless. I wore lipstick one night before dinner. Didn't even notice I had done it until he said, "You look different tonight." He didn't say better. He didn't have to. He remembered things I forgot I said. The wine I drink when I'm low. The candle I light when I miss myself. The way I fake being okay during storms. And still, I told myself it wasn't real. Not like that. Not until the night he touched my hand to pass the salt and neither of us let go right away. Not until I felt it. Not in my skin. But somewhere deeper. Somewhere that had been asleep for years. I tried to tell myself it was comfort. But comfort doesn't feel like your heart skipping beats in the silence. It happened quietly. After a long day, he'd had a failed interview. I had gone through a box of wedding photos I swore I threw out. We drank wine. Didn't talk much, until he said, "This place feels more like home than any I've been in since I was a kid." He didn't look at me. He just said it like it hurt him, and I stood up, out of reflex, just to move, to breathe, to protect myself from something I wasn't ready for. He followed, his fingers brushed mine, and I didn't pull away. The first kiss was hesitant, the second wasn't. I walked into it with eyes wide open, no excuses, no wine to blame, just the sharp, clear truth that I wanted to feel something again. And I did, but desire doesn't dissolve guilt, it amplifies it. He slept in his room, I in mine. But for 2 days we didn't speak. Not because we were ashamed of what happened, but because we knew what it meant. He came to me on the 3rd morning, said he didn't regret it. But he understood if I did. I told him it was a mistake. His smile cracked a little at the edges. He didn't argue, didn't beg, just nodded, like someone who had spent too long being the one not chosen. And I couldn't tell him the truth. That I didn't regret it. I just regretted who I became because of it. He left the house a week later. Said he needed to visit his dad, that he had some boxes to pick up. I didn't hear from him for days. Then came the phone call. From him, the ex. His voice was a tremble away from breaking glass. Said Evan told him everything. Said I was disgusting, manipulative. That I'd ruined his son like I ruined our marriage. I wanted to scream, "You ruined the marriage all on your own." But what good are facts in the face of rage? He hung up before I could say I didn't plan any of this. Didn't even see it coming until it already owned me. Evan never came back. Left a note on the counter. Said he didn't blame me. But he couldn't be near me either. Said he needed to become someone outside of me. Outside of him. Outside of the mess we made trying to feel whole again. I didn't chase him. I let him go. Because sometimes love means knowing when not to ask someone to stay. The fallout came slow, like bruises forming hours after impact. Friends stopped calling, social media went quiet. People smiled with tight lips and whispered after I left the room. My sister said, "I love you, but I can't defend you." I told her she didn't have to. I didn't need defense. I needed forgiveness, and I hadn't figured out how to give that to myself yet. I go days without hearing another human voice now, except mine, and some days even that is too loud. I still think about those nights, the way we talked, the way I felt, not like a widow of a failed marriage, but a person worth listening to again. I miss that more than I miss him, and maybe that's the part that hurts the most. It's strange how quickly a house goes from feeling haunted to feeling like a tomb. At first, I kept walking past the guest room, like I expected to hear his voice, like the silence might break if I just waited long enough. But ghosts don't make noise, not the kind you create yourself. I tried to go back to routine: grocery store on Thursdays, trash out by the curb, coffee at 7 a.m., even if no one was here to drink it but me. I left his mug on the counter for weeks. Not because I was in denial, but because it felt like the only evidence that something had happened. That I wasn't crazy, that it wasn't a dream or a mistake I'd made up in some spiral of post-divorce madness. I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not really. I knew what they'd say. That it was wrong, that I should have known better, that he was vulnerable, that I was older, that I should have stopped it. And they wouldn't be wrong, but they wouldn't understand either. Because it wasn't about lust or rebellion. It wasn't some twisted revenge against my ex-husband, either. It was about being seen. For the first time in what felt like a decade, someone saw past my grief and my guilt and my ruin, and wanted me. There's a cruelty in that kind of clarity. Some nights I sat with a glass of wine and imagined what I would say to him if I ever got the chance. Something mature, balanced, like, "I hope you're okay." Or, "You were never just a replacement for what I lost. You were something I never expected." But none of those things felt enough. And maybe silence was the most honest language we could speak in the end. I tried therapy. The counselor was kind, patient, neutral. She asked me why I let him in. Why him? Why then? And all I could say was, because I was empty, and he was full of things I forgot how to feel. She nodded, made a note, didn't judge. But even in that sterile room, I couldn't confess the hardest truth, that I didn't want him to leave. That even after everything fell apart, I still looked for his face in the crowd. I went back on dating apps. That lasted about 3 days. Every profile felt performative, plastic. Men smiling with their dogs, posing with fish they caught, writing bios that said, "No drama, please." They didn't want complicated. They didn't want me, and I couldn't blame them. I wasn't just complicated, I was wreckage. Salt in wounds I hadn't even bandaged properly. One night I got a message from a woman I barely knew. A friend of a cousin. She said she heard what happened. Said she'd gone through something similar. Not with a Stepson, but with someone she wasn't supposed to fall for. Her words stuck with me. We are never told how to grieve the people who are still alive, but no longer ours. And in God did that hit. Because Avon wasn't dead, but in my world he was gone. I started writing again, not for publication, just to remember who I was before all this. I wrote letters I never sent, poems I never read aloud, pages filled with truths too heavy for daylight. Some nights, I'd whisper his name like a confession. Not to summon him, not in hope, just to feel it in my mouth again. Weeks turned into months. I stopped checking his Instagram, stopped replaying our last conversation in my head. Eventually, I left the house, not to escape, just to breathe different air. I ran into someone from our old neighborhood. She looked at me like she knew, and maybe she did, but she didn't say anything. Just asked if I was doing okay. I lied. Because people don't want the truth, they want reassurance, they want neat endings, closure with a bow. But my story wasn't built for neat, it was jagged, uneven, full of cracks where love leaked out in places it never should have entered. And still, there are days I remember the way he used to look at me across the dinner table, like I wasn't broken, like I wasn't too much or not enough, just me. And I miss that, even now, even still. Not because I want it back, but because it reminded me I could still feel. It had been 7 months since he left. Since that kiss. since I stood in the kitchen with wine-stained guilt and the ache of something beautiful I never had the right to hold. I stopped counting days around month 4. Not because I'd moved on, but because I was tired of measuring my life by what I lost. I got better at being alone. Not perfect, just better. Started reading books again, not to fill the silence, but because I finally wanted to. Went to the farmer's market on Saturdays, picked fruit by touch, not by price. Let the sun hit my skin and didn't flinch from it. My therapist said healing is non-linear. That guilt has layers. That shame isn't always a sign we did something wrong. Sometimes it's just a sign we were awake when it happened. I still hadn't heard from Evan. But then, one day, I opened my inbox and there it was. A single email, no subject line, just, "I've been writing too. Thought you might want to read this." There was a PDF attached. No message after that, just silence. The same silence we left each other in. But this time it felt different, like a door cracking, not slamming. I stared at the screen for a long time. Almost didn't open it. Almost convinced myself that staying in the dark was safer. But healing doesn't come from silence, it comes from walking through it. The file was a short story, fiction technically, but I knew every line was real. It was about a woman who was breaking and a boy who had already been broken, and how they tried to fix themselves by holding each other too tightly in the wrong place, at the wrong time. The last line wrecked me. She was never mine to keep, and I was never hers to save, but we found the quiet in each other, just long enough to remember we were still human. I cried. Not like in the movies. No sobbing. Just this slow, aching release like something had finally been seen and set down. I didn't write back. Not right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed time to understand what I was feeling. Not regret, not longing. Just relief. That we were okay. Apart but okay. Weeks passed. Then one day I did reply. Just one line, I read it. "Thank you for seeing me even when I couldn't see myself." No response. But I didn't need one, because something had shifted in me. And maybe in him too. It's strange how closure doesn't come like thunder. It comes like rain after drought, quiet, necessary, almost easy to miss. I still think of him sometimes. Not often, not with yearning, more like when a song comes on that we used to listen to, or when I pass someone wearing the cologne he used to wear. I don't flinch anymore. I don't linger in it. I just nod to the memory and move forward. That house, I sold it. Too many ghosts, not enough forgiveness in the walls. I moved to a smaller place, closer to the ocean. I sleep with the window open now, even when it rains. I started teaching writing workshops part-time. Not because I think I have all the answers, but because sometimes helping others tell their stories is the only way we learn to tell our own. And sometimes, just sometimes, a student will write something that breaks them open in front of me. And I'll nod. And I'll tell them, it's okay. Some stories aren't meant to be fixed. Just told. That's what this was. Not a confession, not a justification, not even redemption, just a story. One I'll carry. Not with pride, not with shame, but with honesty. Because for a while I forgot I was alive, and loving him even in all the wrong ways reminded me that I still was. It was almost a year to the day. I was walking home from the beach, grocery bag in one hand, sand still on my skin. The breeze had shifted. Warmer, the kind that makes you feel like something's about to change. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. A name I hadn't seen in months. Evan. Just one lining. "Or you home?" I froze in the middle of the sidewalk. Stood still while life moved around me. Cars, couples, waves in the distance. Everything carried on. Except me. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Because 10 minutes later there was a knock at my door. He looked older. Not aged. Just more solid. Like time had carved him into something clearer. We stood there for a few seconds too long. Both unsure if we were allowed to smile. He spoke first. Honestly. "Didn't think you'd still have the same number." I blinked once, twice. "Didn't think you'd use it." He gave a small laugh. That same laugh I used to lean toward. "I've been back in town a few weeks. Thought about reaching out sooner. Didn't want to be disruptive." I looked at him then, honestly, really looked, and it wasn't about attraction anymore. It was about memory. About who we were when we broke each other, and who we were now. "Too late for that," I whispered, half a smile. He smiled back, not coy, not confident, just real. I stepped aside. "Do you want to come in?" He hesitated, then nodded. Only if you're sure. I was. We sat at the kitchen table, same chairs, new plates, different people. We talked for hours. Not about the past. Not at first. We talked about where he'd been, what he was working on, his new job in Portland, my writing workshops, the cat I adopted that runs the apartment like she pays rent. Then he paused, looked down at the mug between his hands, said, I never stopped thinking about you. About us. I know what we did, I know how wrong it felt the world. But to me, it was the first time something felt honest. Even if it was messy. I closed my eyes, felt it in my chest. That ache that had never really left. But now it didn't feel like guilt. It felt like truth. I reached across the table, not to hold his hand, just to rest mine nearby. An invitation, not an answer. I thought letting you go was the right thing. Maybe it was, I said, but I never stopped missing who I was when I was with you. He looked up, eyes softer than I remembered. Tired, but steady. I'm not asking to start over, he said. I just wanted you to know I'm still here, if there's still room, and there it was, not a declaration, not a plea, just possibility. I stood, heart thudding, and walked to the window. The sun was setting, bleeding gold into the ocean. I turned around slowly, and for once, I didn't second guess what I felt. I didn't shrink from it. I walked back over and stood in front of him. He rose from the chair slower than he used to. Like he didn't want to scare the moment away. Honestly, I kissed him. Not desperate, not rushed, just real. His hands touched my waist like they remembered exactly where to rest. I pulled him closer. And when our foreheads touched, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding for a year. There was no music. No background noise. Just the sound of two people choosing to be here now. We didn't rush to the bedroom. We sat back down, held hands, talked about what healing actually looks like. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean. But it was ours. And this time, we weren't clinging to what broke us. We were building something new. Slowly, softly, bravely. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like a mistake. I felt wanted, seen, loved. Not in spite of everything, but because of it.